Hey, what's up guys? So today I want to go a bit more in depth on this case, in this build in particular. This is the SG13. I had a previous video which was more about from the user's perspective, but I wanted to go in depth and just go over some lessons that I learned, as well as things I like and I don't like about this build. This lid sometimes gets a little bit hard to take off, but no worries. Yeah, so I would say starting off with one of the things I like the most is obviously the price. This case can be found consistently around 50 to 60 bucks. Yeah, so I really like that, especially in the small form factor market. That's kind of special, to be honest, because a lot of things are super high quality, but then really high price, 100 plus, 200 plus and up. So at this size is actually a really attractive thing about it. The other thing I really liked was the ATX support. So it can support an ATX power supply. There are some caveats with that, but I liked that because I had an old, this part was from an old ATX build that I had. So yeah, that's one thing I liked. The other thing I like is the drive support. So it has this bracket here. It's right now empty. I just have it here just because it kind of comes with the case. But you can either put two 2.5 inch drives, or you can put even a 3.5 inch drive in just one. And for the longest time I was running a 3.5 inch drive as well as the M.2 SSD, and that was a really nice setup. So it was cool to have such a small case that fit both an ATX power supply and a 3.5 inch drive. Just, carrying over some old parts that I had. Yeah, so yeah, biggest two things that I liked is these two, support. And I guess some of the downsides is, one of them is the GPU support isn't great. I think a lot of the Founders Editions it can do okay with, especially back in the day. But these new like 4000 series, like I don't think you could put a 3090 here, and definitely not the bigger 4000 cards. You can put like probably a 2.5 slot card, which is nice. That actually beats out this other case that I have here, the K55, which is exactly cut off at 2 slots. But yeah, you can have Founders cards kind of go up to here, but a lot of those longer 3-fan cards, it's not going to support. So if you know your card fits, I would say this is a nice thing. The other thing I'm not a huge fan of, it's just the nature of the case, is the CPU cooler support. So here's where the nuance kind of comes in. So if you have a ATX power supply, what I've found is pretty much you have to go with a AIO, unless you have like a really low profile like Noctua, that one L9 cooler. Because even the stock AMD cooler, I've tried it before with the ATX power supply, it goes like really close to the power supply, to the point where it chokes itself and there's just circulating hot air and the temps get horrid. Especially if you have this bottom side down. It's a little bit better with a fan on the bottom, but still not great. So if you're going to run the stock, you can run the stock AMD one. You just have to probably get an SFF power supply, and they have a bracket for that, I think. Or like a lot of power supplies come with it, and then you can offset it up so that you have more room on the bottom. Yeah, so if you wanted to use ATX, you pretty much got to use AIO. Here I have an H60, which is a pretty popular option for this case. I have the tubes on this side. There's different ways to run it. I used to have this old H60 where it had super inflexible tubes, and I had to run it like this and then do some weird ass routing where it kind of went on the side. But this newer one, it works better. I have the fan running in a push configuration. I also have a little RGB ring there. The front can actually run a 140 millimeter fan also, which I think it takes away a little bit from your GPU support, because it actually goes across in that area. Oh geez, my focus. Yeah, I like the front IO also. I think I've seen a version floating around with a USB-C in the front actually, which is pretty cool. Power button on the top. Yeah, I mean, this build in particular, I kind of forgot to go over that, but I'm running a 3060 Ti. Yeah, I'm from EVGA. This was actually purchased back in the dark ages. I got it during a like with a EVGA like not raffle. Like I lined up and then they let me buy one at MSRP, which is cool. It has a 3600 Ryzen 5 in there with, I think, just like 16 gigs of RAM or whatever. With the G-Skill rip jaws or whatever. Super pretty old power supply. But it works really well and I like it. Corsair 600M. It's nice that it's semi-modular, especially in this case. As you can see with the wire management, I kind of used this cavity here to shove all the cables and tried to leave, it's a little bit hard to see, but tried to leave this relatively clear so that air still can come through. Oh, the other detail is most cases you do want to have your ATX or whatever power supply pointing down, just so it's actually sucking air. So the air is kind of coming through from the front, going through, and then actually getting exhausted mainly through here. And you can actually see through that, which is kind of cool. Yeah, that's kind of about it. I have a Arctic, I think P12 fan that was pretty popular. I kind of had some issues with it, like whistling a little bit, but that might just be a me problem. So yeah, take that for what you will. I have these wires up here in case the owner wants to install an extra 2.5 inch SSD. So yeah, you know, it's really nice flexibility. I think there's even room to mount another one down there, but as you can see with this AIO, that's not the easiest thing in the world. I guess another downside is you can't really access the bottom side of the motherboard. So like in traditional cases you can, and as well as sandwich cases you kind of can as well. But in this one, not really, unless you like cut an access hole. I guess one more thing I want to talk about is like one cool thing I've seen people do is they have done like a 3D printed power supply mount so that you can mount your SFF or ATX. Actually, I've seen an ATX one in the front. Kind of turns this into an N-case M1 type layout, I think, if I'm remembering correctly. And then that lets you have a much higher clearance CPU cooler. I've seen like big like Noctua air coolers in there, and that's actually a really cool setup. I've always wanted to do that a little bit with this, just never got around to it. You know, of course you got to shuffle things around a little bit. You know, maybe an intake fan on the back instead or something. But that's one thing I've seen people do to solve the CPU cooler restrictions. The GPU restrictions, you know, there's not too much you can do about that. I'm sure if things didn't fit, you can have it cut some metal to have it go right up against this grill. But, you know, without making crazy modifications, that's about as much as you're going to get. But yeah, overall, you know, a case I really like and had a good time with for a good few years. It comes in black, white, this pink, which is cute too. Yeah, so that's all. If you have any further questions, I guess, if people are still into this case, feel free to ask and I can answer, someone else can answer. But yeah, all right, see ya.